Hi folks, welcome to the second episode of the Chronic Back Pain Roadmap. In the last episode, I discussed common back pain myths. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, start there as it lays a good foundation for what I'm going to be covering in this series. If you have listened to that already, great, we can continue. Today we're going to continue on from where we left off and look at understanding the more likely causes of your pain. So, as I touched on in the last episode, the idea that bad posture causes pain, that discs can slip out of place, and that pain is solely related to damage in a joint, these ideas represent what we call a structural or biomedical model of pain. You can think of that as the old way of thinking that is still the most popular approach, and it's concerned largely with your physical structure and its mechanics, almost as if you're a broken down car and the doctor is a mechanic who can simply chop out one faulty part and replace it with another, or can manually realign your steering, as a simple analogy. So it's an outdated and incomplete view of things, yet it's likely what has been used to explain your pain and what's been used to justify certain treatment recommendations you've gotten. So a more accurate and up-to-date model for explaining pain is what's called the BioPsychosocial model, or the BPS model. This model considers the biological, psychological, and social factors of your life and health and how they interact with one another. So simply put, it considers you as an individual rather than just the bones, joints, and muscles that you're made up of. When we approach pain from a biopsychosocial perspective, we understand that all forms of stress can take their toll on the body, and if the body is unable to mitigate these stresses, it may experience pain. But then on the flip side, if we can manage stress very broadly and address the entire body, not just the physical structure, we can manage, reduce, and overcome pain quite easily. But before we continue, I think it's important to define the word stress to completely grasp this content. Most people think of stress as feeling worried or anxious, but this is only one aspect of feeling or being stressed. So a stressor is pretty much any demand placed on the body, and then the body becomes stressed when it can't meet those demands that are placed on it. So stress, really what it is a physiological event that is characterized by certain hormones being elevated in your body. So hunger, sleep deprivation, intense exercise, or even an uncomfortable argument, just a disagreement, these can all be forms of stress. But stress can be very mild or it can be significant. The key point is how we manage the stress, because ultimately stress is inevitable and it's actually necessary in life. But when it overflows and becomes chronic, that's when the body develops problems such as back pain. So in a biopsychosocial model, we're looking at where the body has been struggling and what is leading to the overall increase in stress. So you have to consider how you're doing mentally. Have you been feeling more anxious, worried, depressed, etc.? Have you experienced a significant loss or change in your life? Basically, have you been under any additional mental stress? Have your social circumstances or support networks changed? You have a group of close friends that you can confide in when you need to. You have outlets and opportunities to be social, either through work, through sports, or various hobbies. And then we still need to consider, obviously, the biological factors. Is your diet supporting your needs? Are you eating enough? Are you eating the right foods? What is your hormonal health like? Issues with these things will generally show up as digestive disorders, sleep disorders, autoimmune issues, and mood disorders. So we begin to consider the other problems you're dealing with, and these will generally seem unrelated and inconsequential. Things like heartburn, indigestion, constipation, eczema or dry skin, energy and mood slumps, insomnia or disrupted sleep, and so on. We begin to see a bigger picture of your health, and it's in this big picture that we'll find a more likely cause for your pain. What I want you to consider is to move away from thinking of the diagnosis as a standalone issue. Rather than thinking of yourself as someone who has, quote, a slipped disc or a bad back or a disc herniation or sciatica or whatever it is, think of yourself rather as an individual who happens to be dealing with these issues as well as other issues. You are not your diagnosis. You are someone experiencing a series of symptoms. And this is a critical thing to understand. And I realize it might seem a bit odd, might seem a bit pointless, but it's really about getting you out of the mindset of looking at a problem with tunnel vision. And as I touched on earlier, in the first episode, the medical system tends to isolate issues and treat the parts of the body rather than the body as a whole. And on top of this, the pharmaceutical industry is based largely around treating conditions with little to no consideration for the environment within which they occur. And reading the average list of side effects for common drugs should make this abundantly clear. So all of this permeates everyday life in our culture, and it shapes the way we look at our own bodies and how we think about our problems. So I'd love for you to think in broader terms that the environment you live in and the environment that you've created inside your body has developed pain and other symptoms, rather than you have a bad back or a slipped disc or sciatica and so on, which reinforces the idea that you simply have a faulty part that just needs to be replaced. Part of the value of this shift in perspective is that it keeps you in control. And it means that you are the one to create the solution within yourself rather than relying on someone else to fix you. Okay, so hopefully this is clear so far, and you're beginning to see how there is more to pain than simply posture or biomechanics. So now let's talk a bit about what you can do to improve things. The simplest analogy I've found is to think of a set of scales with a bucket on either side. So on the left, you have your stress bucket, and on the right, you have your health bucket, and everything that's demanding to your body or bad or unhealthy goes into the stress bucket. Things like work, deadlines, late nights, alcohol, emotional trauma, negative self-talk, past injuries, smoking, insomnia, dehydration, malnutrition, and so on. All of that goes in the stress bucket. Then everything that is replenishing, restorative, and healthy goes into the health bucket. Things like good nutrition, adequate sleep, mindfulness, good breathing, clean air, emotional support, healthy movement and exercise, community, self-expression, creativity, and so on. All of that goes in the health bucket. And you want to look at what way the scales are tipped. Are they tipped towards stress or towards health? And obviously, this is a hypothetical set of scales, and you can't accurately measure things in this way. But if you're dealing with chronic pain, that's a very simple indication that the scales are tipped towards stress. And as a general rule of thumb, the worse the pain is and the more it disrupts your life, the more it permeates every aspect of your life, the more the scales are tipped towards stress. And then, of course, the more you are adaptable, resilient, and able to cope with life, the more the scales are then tipped towards health. Obviously, there are intricacies to this and exceptions to the rule, but it's a simple way of conceptualizing your overall health. So now you can begin to ask yourself, where have there been issues leading up to the onset of your pain? If you think of the BioPsychosocial model, where have there been significant changes or challenges to you, either biologically, psychologically, or socially? And it can be gradual, it can be sudden, it may have been 6 months ago, or a week or a day before the pain showed up. It might just have been something seemingly innocuous that just pushed you past a threshold. So just have a think and keep an open mind. Even if you can't figure out what caused the issue, we can use a very general approach to it. We can begin to figuratively add more into the health bucket. And you can think of the health bucket as being sort of like your bank account. The more it has in it, the more it can pay for the things you need and want, while still having reserves in case of emergency. So we begin to do more things that will help the body heal and self-organize, because the body can and will self-organize if it has the opportunity to do so. So going forward, this is going to be very important to understand. The body has self-organizing and healing mechanisms that work unconsciously. For example, if you get a cut, it heals on its own. You don't have to think about it consciously. So if we can accept that the body has our best interest at heart and that it generally knows what it needs to solve the problem, we can focus on the simpler job of providing it the resources, time, and opportunity to do so. Okay, so that's it for this episode of the series. Hopefully you're beginning to see more pieces of the puzzle and more opportunities to take charge of your pain. I think it's worth taking a bit of time now to visualize your stress and health bucket. You can do it mentally or draw it out, but just take some time to see all the stresses that your body is under and how those compare to what you invest back into yourself. You might ask yourself if you've been ignoring your own needs, if you've neglected the things that you enjoy in favor of your obligations. And we'll delve deeper into this in future episodes, but for now, just ponder these questions and allow yourself to see things through a different lens. In the next episode, I will look at the most fundamental tool you need to harness to create change in your body. And don't forget to share this with someone who needs it. Let me know if you have any questions, and make sure to join the newsletter and follow the Back Pain Coach on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook to get all the information you need to overcome your pain. And all the links are in the show notes or the description below. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.